Thank you. I'm a psychologist here in the Sherut Psychology, the Educational Psychological Services of Efrat. Um, I have been in Israel for the past 13 years since we made Aliyah. I work in several of the schools here, including Asachayel and Ora Judah. Our other facilitator is
Hi, my name is Yael Rosenbaum, and I also work in the Sherut Psychology. We made Aliyah from New Jersey in 2015, so been here for about 8 years. And I'm the school psychologist in the girls' school in Arodatzion Banot. Thank you so much for joining us.
because we do have a lot of participants, we are going to limit the interaction at this point with to be through the chat. So uh, we apologize that we can't take questions in person right now. There because of the amount of people that are here. We'd like to start off with asking you to um, in the chat. Well, I mean, I guess before we do that, obviously this is geared towards Olim of all ages and amount of seniority here, and our goal is to help you build resilience, as it says, for yourself and for your children. And we will have an opportunity to allow you to express some of your thoughts by using the chat box. The first thing we'd like to ask from you is if you can share with us what is your most worrisome thought right now. Okay, just
That might be a hard question to answer because there might be many worrisome thoughts in your heads right now, as there are in all of our heads. But given that this is an unprecedented sort of experience for almost all of us, there's so many different thoughts swirling around, and we wanted to have people just to be able to maybe pick one thing that they're most worried about and put it in the chat.
okay. Some of them that are coming up: terrorist infiltration, my kid's safety. There'll be a world war, husband or sons in the army, mental well-being of our children, grandchildren in the army, nephews in the army. Okay, kids finding out about what happened, other countries getting involved, the war intensifying, right? Okay. Okay, a lot of the similar uh, experiences. Okay, well, we'll give one another few seconds if anybody wants to add. No? Okay. The fact is that all of those thoughts that uh, people mentioned are very legitimate thoughts, very legitimate worries to have at this time. Um, what we psychologists call, this is what we psychologists call an acute stress response, acute stress reaction. When this is our body's reaction, our response within a day or two after being exposed to a traumatic event. The it can affect us in four different aspects of our functioning. In the physiological, in the cognitive, the emotional, and the behavioral. In the physiological realm, trauma gets registered in the body. Okay, we react to the danger with release of hormones, stress hormones of like adrenaline and cortisol, and that causes all sorts of feelings in our body, such as shaking, nausea, loss of appetite, dry mouth, pounding heart, stomach aches, even chest pains, trouble breathing. Some people might have all of them, some of them, none of them, but most people react to the danger, to the stress with some of these physiological symptoms. Often, as time goes on, not only do we have these symptoms, but we also sometimes feel very tired because our body is in motion all the time, and that really takes its toll on all of us. The second realm of reactions is the cognitive realm, and that is where it becomes difficult for us to think in the way that we're used to. We may feel confused. People don't know what day it is, what exactly is happening in the nearby us. We have difficulty making decisions. All of those are normal parts of this stress reaction. The third realm is the emotional. People feel fearful, they feel threatened, they feel helpless, and they are just very much overwhelmed by all the feelings that are occurring to them. And the final area is the behavioral area, what we do. We may find ourselves clinging to other people, or alternatively, just wanting to be left alone. We may start avoiding things that are generally important to us, like taking care of our children or doing the shopping or going to work. All of these symptoms are perfectly normal responses during times of danger. All of these symptoms are our body's way of trying to help us deal with the danger that is going on around us. And this is perfectly, really, the normal thing that happens to all of us when we are in a situation like the one we are in now. The psychological term for if the situation, the symptoms continue after the initial trauma, is what we call acute stress disorder, which is essentially the same symptoms that can be going on for up to a month after a traumatic event. However, generally, traumatic events have a fairly discrete timeline. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. Now that we are in an unusually challenging time because of the extended period of uncertainty, so we expect that the stress reactions, the initial acute stress reaction, will also be prolonged, which means that these symptoms that are so uncomfortable to all of us can continue for a much longer period of time than just the initial couple of days after an event, because this is an event that's not stopping so soon, and we don't know when it's going to stop. It's important to note that on normal times after a traumatic event, about 30% of people develop the acute stress disorder, which is for the first month after, but only about 10 to 15% develop what many people are scared of post-traumatic stress disorder. What we see from this is that most people have a strong ability to recover naturally after facing traumatic events. So the question is, how do we enhance our bodies and our minds' ability to recover? That we call resilience.
Thank you,
And
Jakob. Yeah, so that's where resilience comes in, and that's what we want to talk a little bit about tonight. Um, the definition of resilience is the ability to flexibly face a major disruption. So, if we look at this picture, which is like a classic sort of metaphor for resilience, there's a massive storm all around us, and the rains are pounding, and the thunder is thundering, and there's no way of avoiding it. We're in a storm. And the question is, how do we become that tree that's not going to snap in half? What are the principles that we can learn that can help ourselves become the tree that then can sort of bend from the storm, but ultimately bounce back? Because what we know is that when we're hit with the storm, all of us have experienced some sort of regression in our functioning in the last 10 days. It's unavoidable. It's part of the experience. And what's important is our ability to bounce back and return to normal. So that's what we're going to be talking about now. Because if any of you can relate to the experience of last week, just sort of like being glued to the news, not really paying attention, if you have like young kids at home, not being able to really focus on what their needs are, putting together meals, doing laundry, like just basic parts of our day all of a sudden became very difficult, if not impossible, to carry out in varying levels because we were hit by this storm. So how do we build resilience? One of the critical aspects of building resilience is to be able to reduce helplessness, because so many of us, that feeling on Simchat Torah, of just feeling like this enormous threat and total helplessness, like of all of the evil and the horrors that were going on, and what can we do? What do we do? And so the first element of building resistance is resilience is actually called resistance. Resistance means that we feel a threat. And when we feel a threat, it obligates us to fight and be active in that fight. To be part of the nation that is fighting off this threat. So we saw right away that as all people were called up and went out to Miluim, and the army was sent to all the various places, the community rallied in so many different ways to enlist, to be enlisted in helping in this effort at every single level, whether it be organizing supplies or making food or driving things to bases or writing letters to Chayalim or figuring out how to support the families who have somebody who was enlisted. Volunteering to do patrols of the neighborhood. There's just like millions of different ways that we've all seen our community rally to be part of the resistance. And the reason why I think it's important to realize that this is part of the resistance is because like I was standing next to a friend in Shul on Shabbat, and she was like, all I'm doing is making cakes. Like that's nothing. I'm not doing anything. And really, we know that is so much more. When you can contribute to support the people who are supporting the people who are supporting the people who are on the front lines, we're all connected in that way, and we're all part of this warding off of threat. The same way, if God forbid somebody in a family is struggling with a major illness, so the family spends a ton of energy finding the best care, fighting the insurance company, getting second opinions. All of that is part of the resistance, is saying like, we're going to fight this. And it's the ability to take an active stance and be in doing mode that really fights off the helplessness. So I actually spoke to a very anxious kid last week who was spending a lot of time panicking and trying to distract himself watching TV. And I encouraged him to find something to do to help somebody, to volunteer, to get involved, because the best elixir or medicine for helplessness is to be active and feel like you're part of the resistance. So that's the first leg. One small, I'll open parentheses and just say another aspect of fighting back is actually not exposing ourselves to visual images. We've heard over and over again how we should help our kids get Instagram off their phones and not be watching these terrible videos. Because what we do know is that people can develop post-traumatic stress disorder just from exposure to these visual images, not just because they're really terrifying. But I think that if we also frame it in the context of, by us deciding not to watch these videos, we're saying to the enemy, we are fighting back. We are not willing to let you threaten us in this way and make us feel helpless. And so I think it's also a nice way to describe to our kids when we're trying to help them limit their exposure. I mean, first to ourselves, there's almost this magnetic pull that people feel like they want to watch, they have to see, they need to know. And then sort of a remorse after because of the havoc that it wreaks emotionally to see some of these visual images. If we frame it to ourselves as this is our part that we're fighting back, we're not succumbing to feeling helpless in this way. So that's a very important first leg of this model. The second leg of the model of building resilience is continuity. Continuity means finding the parts of your life that are really important to you and making sure that they continue. It's not the same as routine, because routine means sort of doing what you're used to doing. But it's finding those things that are your anchors and your resources and the things that feel part of your identity and making sure that they continue. So not staying in your pajamas, even if you don't have school, like getting dressed in the morning, that would be an example of continuity. We wake up in the morning and we get dressed. Or these are just examples. Everyone can pick what works for them. But I think the whole idea of 2 hours of school right now, let's say for some kids, going to school for 2 hours, that's not really continuing your education, but it is helping this element of helping kids feel a continuity of their identity as a student. Like, I am a student and I have a class and a teacher and a classroom and I go to school. That's part of what I do. Yes, I can't learn in the same way right now. And maybe school, the goal right now is not even to advance learning necessarily, but it's just to help kids feel togetherness, to feel a little bit of using their minds. A lot of social emotional reasons why we want kids in school right now. But continuity is also a big part of it, of feeling like, okay, that feels normal to me to be in school, or there's some sense of normalcy in that. Like if a family can't get food on the table because they just can't function and get meals cooked, like how can we help them have that continuity of having home cooked meals, even if they don't make it themselves? Can people help out? Can people order in? Like, just finding those anchors and making sure that they continue. So these two legs are very much doing legs, like the resistance movement and making sure that things continue as normal as possible, not normal, making sure that there's some continuity of experience of who we are, is also very much involved in doing. And the last one, reflection, is much more of a stopping, what we call the opposite of doing, which is being, which is very hard to do in times of crisis and trauma, because as we saw, everyone is mobilizing and doing and running. But one of the very important aspects of this model is that we stop and we self-reflect. We turn our attention inwards and we do a self-assessment to say, where am I at? I'm going to be with myself for a little bit. I'm going to check in with how I'm doing. What do I need? What's working for me? What's not working for me? I could do it with myself. I could do it with a spouse. I could do it with my whole family, just to ground yourself. And there's a lot of different ways that you can be in reflection mode. It could be through yoga and mindfulness and meditation. if that's not your thing, like it could be going for a long run, because a lot of people like to think while they're running. It could just be spending time praying, anything that helps somebody sort of stop for a minute, anchor themselves, and discharge some of the stress. It's going to be really, really important to do that, because discharging small amounts of stress over time is what will help us sort of like be able to gather more energy and more koach to keep continuing. I personally felt like I had this experience against my will. I was doing like really in doing mode last week and doing, running, working, whatever. And all of a sudden, Friday night, like when everything stopped and it was quiet, all of a sudden, like I felt like this fear just creep in out of like not of anything specific, just like I hadn't given it enough space during the week to feel afraid. I just kept pushing it away. And so all of a sudden Friday night it just came, and it was a very long night that I didn't sleep. But I think it taught me how important it is to just do this in bite size um, sort of period, so that you can have that space to let go of, or to re-anchor yourself. Okay, and so with that, Yaakov, you could go to the next slide. Okay. We want to just take a few minutes to have you write in the chat if there's something specific that you know about yourself that gives you strength or helps you cope. If you can write that in the chat right now. Mhm.
Okay. We have a lot of ideas coming through. Oops, there you go. And let's talk about some of them. Okay, so um, we have ice cream as one of the things that gives us strength and helps us cope. Um, is it? I would wonder if it's only about the ice cream, or it's also about the moment alone, to take a break and to reflect. Perhaps that would go under the leg of reflection. Um, being purposeful. Yeah, where would that go in? Where would you think that would?
I think it could go either into like we're thinking about all the things that you're writing, and we're thinking about how they plug into each of the three legs of the model that we just discussed. So when it comes to, let's say, Yaakov, what did you just ask about feeling
Being
purposeful?
purposeful.
Feeling purposeful can really be putting yourself back into your regular, it could be continuity. You're like, I'm a purposeful person and I do a lot of very productive things. So when I'm productive, it puts me back in that mode of, okay, I feel a sense of continuity of who I was before this started and who I am now.
I think
Um,
it could also be part of resistance, because I'm acting despite the stress and the discomfort that I'm having. I'm choosing to act and to do things, um, you know, to be myself, to live my life. Um, seeing again and again what an amazing people we have. That would be part of resistance. Seeing the what we are all doing to fight and to be active. Um, hearing support from our for and prayers from friends abroad.
That's also part of resistance, where we know that so many people are in this fight with us. It gives us such a source of it's such a source of strength. Seeing positive videos of Chayalim, it's like the same thing. Like when we see that their morale is high, it makes us feel hopeful. It makes us feel it gives us energy to a koach to see things like that.
Talking with friends.
Talking with friends, I think, is could either be continuity, that it's like that's just part of your life and that you enjoy and you're continuing to do that, or it could be that you talk to your friends about what's going on and it's a time to use for reflection, to say like, how are you guys doing and how are you doing, how are you coping with that, and it's to sort of exchange where everyone is.
We have a few of them saying playing with kids or taking care of kids. That would be both resistance in the sense of doing the things that are important to us. Um, Taking care of our family is the best resistance we could do, as well as continuity to continue doing the things that are important to us in a regular time. Um, Going into the yard and marveling at the clouds in the sky or fresh air.
I think that's reflection, just taking a minute to sort of recenter and appreciate something beautiful. So I
Okay.
think you guys, do you want to go through a few more?
I just want to do one more. There are a lot of them, and some of them are very similar. But someone wrote, honestly, trying to do Israel advocacy on social media and feel like I'm doing something important and beneficial to the war. I think that's exactly your answer is shows us exactly where it is. It's part of being part of the resistance. Um, and there's one more, which is watching something funny, which I don't know, where would that go, Yal? Continuity?
I think you can make a case for continuity or for reflection. I think you guys probably appreciate what we're trying to relay, which is that inherently you're doing all of these things that we've been talking about, but we want you to appreciate sort of what function it is serving in your building your resilience, for yourselves and for your families. Um,
I, I would like to, I think we can go back to the earlier question about some of the worries.
Well, I
Um,
see a question right here in the chat, Yaakov. Somebody wrote about the ambivalence of feeling, of living in Israel and versus staying. Leaving Israel versus staying. Feeling ambivalent about being here.
okay.
So that's one
This is
question.
what yeah. Okay.
Um, but before we get to that, there was one other thing that that had come up that I just want to address, which is sort of as Olim. I think especially if you've been here for a short amount of time, when it comes to speaking to kids about current events, I think that it's an art that needs to be learned. Um, because I think that the sort of, I would put in quotes, like the luxury of living in the United States or elsewhere in the diaspora, where you have distance the from terrible news that's happening in Israel. So you're able to pick and choose what you want to share with your kids, younger kids at least, who are not on their phones all the time. But unfortunately or fortunately, because we live here and we're all in this together, and so there's a lot more exposure, and there's a lot more information that even younger kids need to know, because if we don't tell them about it, it's something that they're probably going to hear elsewhere, whether it be in the hallway at school or on what on social media or whatever it is. And so we wanted to just emphasize that it is important to have kids hear information from us as parents. They need it in an organized way, in a calm way, in a way that like they feel close to us. We're making eye contact with them. We're hugging them. We're sharing it in a way that if we can do it in that way, then they can take the information in a much calmer way and try to make sense of it with us. That being said, there's always gonna be information that they learn without us, most likely. And so the idea is just that we make ourselves available on a regular basis to say, hey, do you have any questions about what's going on? Did you hear anything that you're like a little confused about? Making sure that we as parents are the address that kids know that they can come to with a lot of the confusing or scary information that they hear. Because
Right.
even something so basic in terms of what's been going on, that there are people who have been kidnapped, I would understand a parent's tendency to want to refrain from sharing that with a child who's in first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade. But at the same time, that's going to be something that even in a classroom of a teacher who's sharing very limited information, all of Am Yisrael is davening for the Chatufim, and it's something that like is very much part of the dialogue and the conversation. And so that would be something that would need to be shared with kids.
I just want to stress that again, like you said, people, it's very normal for people not to want to share these things, but especially in the age of social media, kids are going to find out about a lot of these things. Maybe not all the details are necessary, but kids are going to find out about a lot of things. And again, if they don't hear it from us, we don't know how they are going to understand it. And it causes a lot of confusion and misunderstandings, and kids can imagine things well more complicated than they really are. And so if us telling them about it gives you the, as parents, gives us the control to have them understand and learn about it in a supportive way, instead of being confused and learning things that they can't fully understand and not having anyone to explain it to them. So I think that's really important, because social media has really changed the way, I'm sure all of you have experiences, but change the way information is shared, and we can't really as parents ignore that any longer.
Yaakov, do
Well,
you want to address the question of ambivalence about staying in Israel, leaving?
right. Yeah, it's hard to not identify as an Olet, or even someone who's been here for 13 more than 13 years. It's hard not to identify with that feeling. And I had a number of friends from the States, both Jewish or otherwise, who messaged me and says, "Hey, why don't you just come to New York or come to the States, and until things are safe?" And it's really a normal thought to have. And there's no good answer for that. If we have idealistic reasons that we've come here, those are still in play. But I think when it comes down to it, is this is the choice that we've made for our family. This is the choice that we have, wanted to live our life. And if it made sense, for us in the big picture to do it, then we stick with our decisions, and we try to go through life in general. That's what we do. We don't change our mind every time something happens. So I do think that it's a challenging, very very challenging thought to have, because there's a definite truth to it. And by the way, this is the same for the worries about children and grandchildren and spouses in the army. That is definitely terrifying. As speaking as someone who has a son, two children who served in the army. One son was called up already on the first day, the first on Salat Torah. It's there's no way not to be terrified of that. And that is part of our life right now, and why we're feeling the discomfort that we're feeling. And that we use the ideas that we spoke about and maintain our strength and maintain our desire and the strength to continue, that is what gives us the strength to cope with these challenges.
I would just add that when we were sitting in our mamad on Simchat Torah, that was the first thing that came out of my kids' mouth. They were like, "Ima, we want to go back to America. We don't want to die." And in that moment, I felt like I also don't want to die. Get me out of here. And I think that the scariness of this situation, despite the fact that we made a decision to come here, all of a sudden it reopens that decision. Like, did I make the right choice? Should I change my mind? Um, and it's almost like recommitting to Aliya all over again. Um, do I really want to stay here? And do I really want to stick this out? Um, and that is something that nobody can really decide for anyone. That's a very personal choice. But I think that what Yaakov was saying, if you remind yourself of the reasons why you came, if you can connect yourself back to those reasons and they still resonate, then what we would recommend is using these sort of resilience building like strategies to try to help you feel the power of how of being here and being part of what's going on here. Um,
Which
yeah,
won't take away the fear and it won't take
right.
away the stress. That none of this resilience building is meant to stop us from being scared. We will always be scared when the sirens go off and when we hear the news. But and we use our resilience, our natural inborn resilience that we can build and strengthen with the ideas that we spoke about to maintain our lives and to maintain our quality of life despite the fear and the threat that's going on around us.
I want to just address a question that came to me directly from somebody who was asking about feeling very emotional since the war started, especially since she has a husband who is in Miluim, and she's living with family who refuses to express emotion. Everyone has to be happy and be helping, and that's sort of exacerbating the feelings of sadness and loneliness. And that she's being given the messages that she's in more pain and that she's bringing everyone down. Um, I'm so, so sorry that you're having that experience. I think that it's so fascinating, and it reminds me of something that I wanted to say, is that it sounds like your family is really focusing on the resistance, on helping, on being empowering, on contributing, and they're neglecting the reflection aspect of needing to be true to yourself and true to your feelings. And obviously, like, just being besimcha all the time is not where any of us are at. It might be a good coping strategy for somebody for a limited amount of time, but even that is not going to last for a long term, because we know that, like, your feelings just then get pent up inside and have nowhere to go. What's incredible about this model is that it's really hard for an individual to make sure that they're doing all these three things, that they're involved in resistance, that they are making sure that there's aspects of continuity, and that they're doing reflection. Once you start adding people to a system, whether it be a family, or even consider we live in a frat, and so a community, the municipality, a school, the more people you add and you create a community of people, even at a family level, now it's so much easier to make sure that each of those legs of the model are being carried out, because then you can delegate. Well, let's say your in-laws or your parents are really good at resistance. Great, then that's their thing, and they can be involved in that. But let's say you're more tending towards self-reflection. If they're open to having those experiences to do that together with you, that would be amazing. It sounds like there might be some of their resistance to reflection, but so then you have to find ways of doing it on your own. But I totally I'm so sorry that you're in pain in this way, that you feel like if you feel your feelings, then you're bringing everyone down. Um, but that's what makes this model so powerful, is that the more people you add, the more resilience we're able to build, because different people can take different aspects of it. Were there any other questions in the chat that I missed?
I think that we've addressed them all if there's somebody who has a question, a specific question, you could put it. Oh, here's some new stuff that's come in. Some people's children don't want to go back. Okay, that's great. Some people actually feel safer here. Okay, great. This is already, we see the resilience kicking in already, and that's fantastic. I would just like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And if you have specific concerns about your children in particular, we would like to suggest that you bring it up through your child's school, through the teacher and the OETSET, and to raise those questions there. And we're necessarily the psychologists in the front. We do get involved. The first line in any situation is your child's teacher and the school staff. So if there are questions that you have, we'd like to suggest you go there. Okay. Someone requests someone requests that we go back to the slide with the model. We'll go back to that for 1 second. I guess someone wants to take a picture of it. We will also try to make the recording available through, and we have to thank for their support for tonight, the Olim department from the Moetza V'Frat, as well as Merkaz Chosen Etzion. We will try to distribute the recording through those channels. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Yaakov and Yael. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Yaakov Berger, for setting this up and for being behind this.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.